And I'm Rachel, and we are so excited today. Amber is here.
Hello, everybody.
And we have a special guest. This is so exciting. We have critic and podcaster extraordinaire William Bibbiani is here.
Hi, how you guys doing?
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on our little podcast.
Thank you very, very much for inviting me. I feel like I kind of shoehorned my way in here when you had the Alonso Duralde episode, and I was like, I want to do that, like really loud on Twitter, and then you guys took pity on me and invited me on the show. So I'm very flattered, and thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here.
No, I am so excited because we were talking off air that where Amber gets excited about actresses and actors, I get excited about film critics because I love I'm a film critic groupie, so very excited to talk to you.
I mean, I feel like that's not doing justice to how much Rachel loves film critics. It's absurd. I mean, honestly, Bibbs, her, like, all of our messages are like, oh my gosh, William Bibbiani looked at our tweet today. It was the best day of my life.
You're making all that up. And
I am not. I will show you the receipt.
Oh my God. I will say this. I'm totally, Rachel, I'm totally on your wavelength. I am a film critic groupie as well. I have this huge imposter syndrome in which I don't know why I'm here. The fact that I get to do like videos and things with like some really cool people just blows my mind, and I keep waiting for them to kick me to the curb. So I always am in awe of the best film critics in the world. So which is funny because, like, you know, there's this whole mentality of like, do we need film critics? And I'm like, I guess kind of no. But it's nice to have us. We're fun and we see movies and tell you about them.
Yeah, I'm grateful.
Yeah. Thank you very much. No. Listen, it's great. It's a really, really fun gig, and it's lovely to hang out. And what I love about it now is that people are kind of like diversing, and they're getting into some like weird niche areas because of the internet, because of podcasting. And so, you know, I don't know if I ever would have seen like a publication dedicated exclusively to critical analysis of the Hallmark movies. But now we have y'all, and it's so much better to have something like this out there, and I'm really, really honored to be part of it. So thank you.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad that we filled that void in everyone's life that they needed for a Hallmark movie analysis. But so tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became to be a critic and your podcasts and your other things that you do.
Well, I mean, I guess it's both complicated and very simple. I could take you through every weird life decision that led to it. But I grew up, you know, watching TV and loving movies. And what was kind of a key time for me was there was about a half a year where I was taken out of one school, but it was too late to join another school. So my mother, who's an elementary school teacher, decided to homeschool me for like a few months. And in that time, not only was I doing math worksheets and studying history, but she insisted that we treat film history like another part of an important, you know, base education. So like you would have required reading. Now you also have required movies. So when I was like 8 or 9 or 10, you know, I was watching Citizen Kane, Mrs. Miniver, Alfred Hitchcock. And that was really formative for me. And I really started falling in love with the medium and the history of it and doing all the research for it. And I would read, like, I would get like college textbooks from used bookstores in high school, and I would just read them. And one thing led to another. I went to UCLA Film School. I poked around in the industry for a little bit, and finally I realized that my niche really was writing about movies. And from that point on, I wrote for free for several years until I started writing for a very little amount of money. And then I started making enough to kind of not have to work at Staples anymore. and then, you know, it takes a really, really long time for most aspects of the industry, for most creative endeavors. People always ask, like, how do you get into filmmaking, or how do you get into being a cinematographer? How do you get to being a film critic? And it's usually the same story. You work for nothing, you work for a pittance, and then you might make a living. So right now I'm at the point where I make a living and I get to write for a bunch of cool websites, and I started a couple of podcasts. We had a podcast through a website I worked for, but then that website is no more. So we started some new ones relatively recently, me and my podcast co-host Whitney Seibold. One of them is called Critically Acclaimed. It's on the Schmoes Know iTunes feed and the SK Plus YouTube network. We review new movies, but we mostly, our big focus is we review one classic movie and one bad movie every single week to show how there's a lot of like similarities between the two, and try to elevate the discourse about bad films and kind of lower the discourse about good films, and just show everyone that like there really is no difference and we can all appreciate all of them. And we also have a podcast called Canceled Too Soon, in which we review television series that lasted only one season or less. Some of these are rather famous, you know, your Freaks and Geeks, or I don't know, Firefly, Constantine, exactly. But a lot of them have been completely lost to history, and there's a lot of really fascinating shows that could have been a big deal, just weren't. And it's interesting to rediscover them and try to reintroduce them to people, and try to get them talked about in that cult mentality.
I think that's really interesting. You know, I remember when I was in high school, we got to go to this like behind the scenes, whatever, actor seminar for a Broadway show. And there was the lady who was playing Carlotta on Phantom of the Opera at the time. And she said, every overnight sensation on Broadway is 10 years in the making.
Yes.
And I think that's true with every career. Like my sister is finally had three books, picture books published. And it took her 10 years, basically.
That's fantastic. Good for her.
Yeah, and this is pretty exciting. And I know it just seems like almost everybody you talk to them, that I think that's close to true. I mean, every once in a while you have your Barbra Streisands or whatever that make it big at 18. But yeah, I think that.
Well, they say that luck is opportunity meets preparation. It doesn't matter if the opportunity comes along if you're not prepared to take advantage of it. And in order to prepare yourself, you have to do the work, you have to pay your dues, you have to do your research, you have to know how to do the job. So, like, if an opportunity comes along to be a professional film critic and you don't know how to do that well, it's pointless. So yeah, everyone's trying to do the work, and everyone's just trying to get out there. And it's interesting how like you can be present in the conversation because of social media, and you can also just not have an outlet. Like you could not be writing for anyone right now, and you can still like contribute and stay active, and hopefully, you know, make the conversation more interesting. I think it's it's an interesting place we're in right now. We're all trying to figure out what it's evolving into.
Yeah, it really is. How did you get into Hallmark movies?
You know, Alonzo told my story already in his episode, but I'll tell it again. A couple of years ago, 3 or 4 now, actually. Wow, time. I was in a car accident, and I ended up having to have knee surgery. And that sucks, and I don't recommend it unless you need it, in which case I obviously recommend you get the knee surgery. If you can avoid knee surgery, do. Because there's just kind of nothing you can do. Like, you're in this terrible cast, and it's like 6 weeks where you can't really bathe well, and you're just kind of holed up on a couch. And I was in an apartment without an elevator, and I was on the 2nd floor, so there's nothing I could do. So, fortunately, it was November, and it was Hallmark season for Christmas movies. So
what year was this?
I want to say, what was that one with the year the Julie Benz one, where she owned a department store and her new Santa Claus might actually be Santa Claus, but she might not be down with it because business.
Yes.
Whatever year that was the big release I remember at the time.
Oh, darn it.
I
can't remember what it's called.
I want to say 2015.
It is Charming Christmas.
Yeah, I want to say 2015.
2015 is correct.
Okay, so about 3 years ago now. And, you know, I was just, I'm a depressed and anxious person a lot of the time anyway. And, you know, I'm starting to feel real bad about myself, and I'm uncomfortable. And then, boom, Hallmark. And I think the first one that I really watched was the Brandon Routh one with the cat. I think it was like 9 Lives of Christmas.
Yes.
Which is not a well-made movie. Like, you watch it and it's just like, this is not shot very well. And like the pacing is off. And it is the most charming thing I have ever seen. It is a delight in every conceivable way, and I will watch more of your films, Hallmark. And what I discovered, because I'm actually like, I'm one of my things as a film critic is I'm really big on genre studies, and I'm really interested in the way that films sort of congeal. And you'll make a film that's about a similar topic, but because other films sort of successfully do one thing, other movies kind of start doing the same thing, and they start kind of following similar patterns. And that goes from everything to slasher movies, to dance movies, to biographical motion pictures. And on Hallmark, because they're really uncomplicated, you start really seeing the formula. You start really seeing like the index cards on the wall, where it's just like, okay, introduced to a single lady in funny job. She works at a hat store in Hats Off for Christmas. Perfect example. She meets, she is currently dating guy who likes business. She wants to do Christmas thing. Guy who likes business is unavailable because business. She runs into guy who likes Christmas. Guy who likes Christmas is mildly annoying but very affable. She's forced to spend time with guy who likes Christmas. That makes it, and because he likes Christmas and her boyfriend doesn't, it's okay to cheat on the boyfriend.
Yeah, pretty much.
Everything's turning out okay, and then boyfriend returns, and she realizes, oh, right, I have responsibilities, and ethics are a thing. And so she briefly goes back to that guy, and then she remembers, oh, wait, no, the other guy likes Christmas. And she goes to that guy, and we're good.
Yeah.
Like, that's most Hallmark Christmas movies, and, like, it varies a little bit. Some of them have, like, more of a magical gimmick than the others, or, but, like, 90% of them hit most, if not all, of those bullet points. And I just started getting fascinated with how every single one of these movies is the same movie but different. And yet, because it's Christmas, they're getting away with it, because Christmas is a time for tradition. When we listen to the same songs every single year for a month or more at a time, we eat the same foods, we do the same activities. And as a result, this sameness is creating this very homey quality. And it's a homey quality that I don't think everyone can even relate to. Like, I've never lived in a Midwest town where people, roast chestnuts on the street and have adventures. Like every Hallmark movie has a scene where you have to pick out the Christmas tree, and then you're talking about Christmas while you do it. Yeah. And then a guy comes in and just like, well, I was going to get this tree. And you're like, well, meet cute. And he's like, I know. And then they fall in love. Like, that doesn't happen most of the time. But it very quickly, you watch like 3 or 4 of them, and it's like you're indoctrinated into a cult. And it's a great cult where everyone's really nice and charming. And yeah, they're not all good by any particular estimation, but they're all enjoyable on the same wavelength. They all have pretty much the same positive qualities, and they also have a lot of the same flaws. Some of them are simply just because of budget. Some of them are, there's a lot of people that the Hallmark movies don't think exist, at all.
Yeah.
Like, most non-white people are not in there.
Yeah.
People of different sexual identities,
yeah,
mostly not there. Anyone who's conservative is kind of off to the side a little bit. Anyone who has any sort of serious illness does not exist in a Hallmark movie.
Ask, I noticed in your list of your top favorites, you didn't have any of the emotional ones. Like, you went for all the wrong, you didn't have a November Christmas.
No.
Or a Season of Miracles or things like that.
Generally not. I find most of my favorite Hallmark movies are escapist, rather than sort of confrontational. Most of mine come from the Hallmark movie channel and not Hallmark Movies and Mysteries, which I find tends to have the more melodramatic ones.
For sure.
And listen, that's a taste, and that's totally fine. I'm not going to decry those at all. But if for some reason when I'm watching Hallmark and when Hallmark tries to tackle something serious, it comes across as a little less sincere than when they're just saying Christmas is neat and traditions are fun. I buy it when Hallmark says that. I'm like, yeah, I'm with you on that. But when they start trying to pull out the waterworks, not every production is effective enough to make that work for me, because I'm not necessarily invested in the characters, because not all the actors are doing their best work, or just, the storytelling is a little, I can handle a certain amount of trite storytelling if it's in service of fun and Christmas. But when it's just like, and soldiers returning from war, and I'm just like, you gotta have a deft hand to make that work, and they don't always. So my favorites are the escapist ones.
Yeah. Interesting.
Well, I'm 100% with you on that, so.
Nice.
So sorry, Rachel. We're a team over here.
Yeah. Listen, there's a Hallmark for everybody, am I right?
That's
Yeah,
right. I mean, they
true.
produce enough content that I guarantee you everyone could find one movie they enjoy.
Basically think that Hallmark is doing right because their ratings are just through the roof. So you think they just found the formula and they execute it well enough, basically.
Well, one of the things that I discover over time is that, everyone's lives are different. I know that sounds obvious, but it works on a very individual moment-to-moment level. And the moment that everyone has to celebrate Christmas or do Christmas things, especially as you grow older, varies. So if you're in the mood for something Christmassy, boom, Hallmark, anytime from October 25th through New Year's, you got something right there, and it's always the same movie, so it's always what you're in the mood for. And I think that's great. But you bring up a good point. These films are very popular. They get really good ratings. They are they're huge. And it's one of the reasons why I kind of wanted to really emphasize them and really look at them every Christmas, because I think there's this tendency sometimes in the critical community to overlook something if it's on TV or if it seems to be made with sort of a frivolous mentality. Oh, it's just a Christmas movie, we'll throw it out there. But it reaches this huge audience, and I think it really behooves us to give it an extra look because it's reaching so many people. We need to actually sort of take a look at what are these films doing? What are they saying? What makes them good? What makes them not good? We need more critical analysis of this thing, in part because it is reaching so many people. And when you don't talk about something critically, when it reaches a lot of people, you run the risk of it kind of running rampant and maybe it becoming kind of a monster. And we don't want it to become a monster. We want it to be a good thing. We've seen this happen on the internet where just something happens and no one's paying attention to it, and all of a sudden it's this gross thing and no one likes it anymore. And I want to just sort of take Hallmark aside and say, listen, a lot of people are watching these things. Let's give it some critical analysis.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think they're insanely popular. I think they're popular for that reason, because they are familiar, because they are comfortable. And sometimes that means we're willing to overlook a lot of the things that are happening in them. And I think it's way more interesting to have a conversation about them, which is another reason why I love your show.
Thank you. Wow. We don't want a Hallmark to become like I don't know, the Gangnam Style or whatever. We want to stay.
Or even we see this in the geek community, where they become gatekeepers of it, where people are just oh, you're not a real DC superhero movie fan. And I'm just no. We should all be able to just talk about these, say what we like, what we don't like. It's okay to say you like some Hallmark movies and not like some others for these reasons. And it's okay to say I like them, but they all do this and that's lame. We need to be able to just sort of have a polite and well-reasoned conversation about them.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say too, I totally relate to your story about the knee, because I also had the same thing happen to me. But this was back in 2014. But my I guess my rescue was I watched the whole Disney canon, and
there you go.
Yeah, and reviewed, because that was something I'd always wanted to do. Because that was before I dived hardcore into Hallmark. But
there you go.
I had a similar experience where I'm I'm just going to be sitting here, I can't move. What am I going to do?
I'm a big completionist. I like to really just delve into something and see all of it. So whenever an opportunity comes along, I just did an article where I ranked every Dwayne Johnson movie. That gave me an excuse to see every Dwayne Johnson movie, and I'm yes! My collection will be complete.
You're now I can finally watch The Tooth Fairy.
Yeah, yes. Well, actually, you know what? Not bad.
I know, it's good.
It's actually pretty good. I like that one. It's funny. Better than Game Plan. Of the two Dwayne Johnson and a Tutu movies, Tooth Fairy is the one to go to. But yeah, no, I'm totally with you on that. And I love doing these deep dives and really giving everything the critical analysis it I think warrants.
Yeah, it's really fun. Well, I wanted to ask about your show, The Cancel Too Soon. And my question is, are there just too many shows? Like, the good shows just can't, like, make? I mean, there's so many shows. Like, I just, it gets overwhelming.
There are two, I don't know if there are too many, but there's so many that there's no conceivable way to watch them all. And especially like nowadays with every cable channel trying to get their original content and get their Emmys. And there's a show out there for almost every person and almost every community, which is really, really great, but it's impossible to keep up. And when you look at, like my show does, sort of the history of failure, you realize that most shows don't work. Most shows don't become series. Most shows don't last very long. And it's interesting to look at television as this history of trying things and screwing up. Like, it's just you look at every year, find an old Entertainment Weekly that's a fall TV preview guide from like anything from like more than 2 years ago, and just see how many shows you do not recognize that are not there anymore, that did not become a thing. And I like my show because we get to sort of resurrect those. Like, people worked really hard on those, and yeah, a lot of them stink, and we talk about that, but sometimes they were really good, and it's really disappointing that something like Journeyman, for example,
thank you. Right? Journeyman was so good, and it did so many things that all of these like travel back in time movies try to do so well, and I was so furious when it was canceled.
Like, it's really sharp, it's really well written, I like the acting, I love that it's a movie in which someone gets like a crazy superpower and doesn't hide it from their spouse, and they actually like have to deal with that. Like, it's almost like he ended up with some sort of like medical condition that they just have to deal with on a daily basis, except in his case it's traveling back in time and having adventures.
Yeah,
like, they handled it really, really well. I loved being able to see that show. I finally had an excuse to go back and watch Journeyman, and that show is a tragedy that didn't last. Like, that was so good. But then we see a lot of shows that are total junk, and you're just sort of just like, yes, I see why, I don't know, Future Cop didn't work out. You know, like Ernest Borgnine is a cop and his partner is a robot in the 70s, and it's not good. And you're just sort of just like, yeah, okay, we're just going to strike that off the list. Did that. That's great. Where's another Journeyman? Someone find me another Journeyman, because that was awesome.
Well, I have two suggestions that I think you should talk about on your show.
Okay.
One that I loved is called A to Z.
Okay.
That I was so charming, with Kristen Milioti and Ben Feldman, about their relationship, and each episode was a letter in the alphabet, and it was narrated by Katie Seagal, and it was so good.
Great. Okay. That actually wasn't on our list, so I will add it to the rather long list, fair warning. But yeah, what else have we got? What's the other one?
Another one I loved was called Hindsight, and this was on VH1, and it almost got a second season, so they left it on a cliffhanger, and then while they, like, right before they, I guess they started filming season 2, it got canceled. So it was really good. It was about this girl who's just failing in her life in her 30s, and she basically wakes up one day and she is back in the 90s in her like 20-year-old self, and she's experiencing all the stuff that she experienced. It's like, should I marry this person and it ended badly? Should I make the same choices that I made before?
Okay, so it's kind of Peggy Sue Got Married.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. But
with like amazing 90s fashion and music.
Yes.
Well, I'm sure that's how they felt about the 50s fashion and Peggy Sue Got Married, but fair enough.
Yeah.
No, I will add those to the list. Those sound really, really fun.
It's really good.
Also, I want to put one in.
Yes.
Wonder Falls.
We know about Wonder Falls.
Okay,
Wonder Falls is one of the ones we get. We are coming up on our 100th episode, and we are going to do a countdown of the shows we get the most requests for, because we try to space them out, because if we did all the famous ones up front, it'd be nothing but the obscure ones, and then no one would. We'd lose some people who like just want us to cover, like, when are you going to get to Briscoe County Jr.? And I'm like, eventually. Like, we'll get to it, man. But like, Wonder Falls is one we get to we get a lot of requests for, and it really is only a matter of time. But you know, there are a fair number of these things that you know, people love.
I thought it would be fun, since we had you on the show, to talk about one of the queens. We like to call them the queens of Hallmark. And we left it open to you to select your favorite, and you went with Alicia Witt. And so we're going to talk about Alicia Witt and her 6 films that she's done for Hallmark. And so why do you like Alicia Witt?
Alicia Witt, okay, first off, when we talk about the queens of Hallmark, also, it's sort of unofficially, like after Mariah Carey, the queens of Christmas as well. So we've got the Lacey Chabert, we got Candace Cameron Bure.
Right.
I think to a lesser extent, you have like your Danica McKellars.
Yeah.
But Alicia Witt is one of those people who, when they appear in a Hallmark movie, you know it's gonna be good, because she has a really good attitude in her performances. First off, she's charming. She's very funny. But she's not afraid to look like a crazy person. And you see that in a lot of her material. Like, she has this innate understanding that the types of characters who get this obsessed over things like Christmas or backyard weddings are people who are eccentric, that they are unusual, and that those eccentricities can make them really, really likable. Whereas you watch Lacey Chabert do it, and it feels like she doesn't understand that that's not necessarily quote unquote normal behavior. Not that normal is good, but like, you know, that she treats it like it's an everyday thing. And I'm just like, no, that's, most people don't like have wishes granted by Santa Claus, and now they can't lie, which is, by the way, Alicia Witt did first. But okay, yeah, like that's a thing. Alicia Witt seems to have this understanding that she's in, whether or not the movie is being taken seriously, something funny. Like and not like she's making fun of it. She just knows that there's humor in there. So, like, I liken it to, if Candace Cameron Bure is the Arnold Schwarzenegger of the Hallmark universe, and if, like, Lacey Chabert is the Sylvester Stallone of the Hallmark universe, Alicia Witt is the Jackie Chan, where she is doing the same action, but she's having a lot more fun doing it. So when you watch her movies, her performance is a bit broader. Her performance is a bit more chipper in a lot of ways. And yet, when it comes right down to it, she's very, very talented, and she can bring some really genuine moments to material that on the surface is very surfacey. And I love her for that. And I think every time I see the upcoming list of Hallmark movies, I just find the Alicia Witt one. I'm like, that one's being DVR'd. That one's going to be good. And sure enough, she does not fail me.
I personally appreciate the movies that allow a bit of humor and comedy. And even if it's not necessarily the most like hilarious topic, she really is able to find the funny and bring in elements of humor, which just elevate the movies for me. Mm-hmm. So yeah, she's awesome.
She reminds me a lot of Ginger Rogers.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't really seen her dance much, but if you look at Ginger Rogers' performances, which I think some people sometimes downplay in favor of just watching how amazing a dancer she is in a lot of films. But you look at a film she was in, like...
Bachelor Mother?
Bachelor Mother's a great one. I was thinking of Monkey Business with Cary Grant, where they take this potion that makes them devolve and start acting like 10-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
Just the comedic, broad timing of it, but also the genuineness of that character, even though like it's an absurd concept. She's got this sort of wide-eyed theatricality to her performances that I think works real well in the Hallmark milieu. I think it really works well in this very arch universe they've created, in which these types of dramas, like, I'm going to have a backyard wedding. Well, heck, we can get 2 hours out of that. That's going to be and we're going to make it a serious one. Yeah, that's going to be a drama. We're really going to turn on the waterworks and backyard wedding. Who do we get for that? Yeah, we need Alicia Witt. Yeah, no one else is going to make that work.
Yeah, I think she'd be the Lauren Bacall in the remake of How to Marry a Millionaire.
There you go. Yeah, she's great.
So there's 6 different movies that Alicia Witt has been in, and so what I thought of doing is we'll go in chronological order and then each give where they are in our ranking.
Got it.
That works. So she started out 2010 in Backyard Wedding. This is her only non-Christmas movie that she did. And we have an affection for this movie a little bit on our podcast because it is written by Nina Weinman, who was our first interview and is just the best. And it's basically, she plays this woman who's always dreamed of having this backyard wedding. And she lives next door to her family lives next door to her ex-husband, who it was the love of her life, whatever. And things didn't end too well. Her ex-husband's played by Teddy Sears. She comes back, and they end up coming back into contact with each other, and the old feelings start to come back, as we say. And Amber, what do you think about this one?
I like it well enough. I feel like the concept was fine. It's very Sweet Home Alabama.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's not necessarily my favorite thing. Like the Bibbs mentioned, like we're supposed to be fine with her cheating on her fiance, kind of, but and it's, it is what it is because he's kind of a jerk. But also, I kind of think her ex-husband's kind of a jerk, so she's just picking between two jerks. But it has some fun moments, and it's fine. It's serviceable. It's not obviously my favorite one, but it's pretty good.
And what do you think, Viv?
Okay, this is one of the two movies that I actually saw really recently for the first time because we were doing this podcast. I'd seen the other four. I didn't realize Backyard Wedding even existed, so I just watched this. And this one doesn't quite work for me. There's things I like in it. I think the performances are uniformly quite good. Obviously, Alicia Witt owns it. And the setup is fine. The going back home for a wedding, oh no, my ex is here. My boyfriend likes business. And he's going to business this sucker, and he's going to be late because business and business. And fine. But yeah, I think the problem here, and I think Amber pointed out perfectly, is both the guys are jerks.
Yeah.
The main guy, the boyfriend who she's marrying, we never get to see them interact at all. Presumably, they have some sort of relationship with enough intimacy and closeness and shared experience that she really wanted to marry him. And this is a woman who's been married already. So she's probably going to be a little careful about who she picks. So the implication is he's got some positive qualities, but all we see is he has a business opportunity in one place. She is just got out of medical school, and she's going to have her internship or whatever it is at another place. And that's a problem. And it is a problem. And that's something they would have to deal with regardless of how well their relationship was going. But that's lame, and it's happening right before the wedding, and I get it. On the other hand, Teddy Sears is basically a stalker in this. Because, first off, they haven't spoken in years. Okay, that's fine. We find out that because they were neighbors, he's still friends with her brother. Okay, okay, they talk. That's fine. As soon as he finds out she's having a wedding, not only does he immediately come back to town, and he admits he did this on purpose. This isn't like, oh, my mom's in the hospital, so I had to be here. It's just like, no, I found out you were getting married, and I realized I should have been the one to marry you. And so I'm here to sort of insidiously take you away from your husband. And I'm like, this is my best friend's wedding, except Julia Roberts isn't acknowledged as the bad guy. Like, that's kind of what this is. It's from that perspective, and it's kind of creepy and wrong. Like, he never does anything too horrible, but everything he does is insidious. And as a result, I kind of wanted her to assert her independence and not marry anybody, because it's one of those things where it's just like, oh, I'm not going to have my backyard wedding, my business boyfriend, blah. And then Teddy Sears is just like, well, I'll marry you again. We haven't spoken in like 10 years until like a couple of days ago, but now I think I'm right for you. And I'm like, no, maybe date a little while, see if it's okay, but no, I'm not buying any of this. Yeah. And that bothered me.
Yeah, for me, I think that I just didn't think that they had great chemistry, and I can buy like the most ridiculous contrivances if I feel like the couple has great chemistry, but I didn't feel like they did. And he is not very likable, and that's the problem. But I do think that the dialogue is pretty good. I think Nina is pretty good at writing like dialogue back and forth, and I think that like the rivalry between the two dads is kind of funny. So it's watchable, I think.
One of the things I like about this movie, just to talk about the writing, because this is one of the few Hallmark movies in which all of the minor characters feel like they have inner worlds.
Yeah.
Like they go get ice cream together, and the ice cream vendor is allowed to have dialogue that implies that she's a person.
Yeah.
And that's something that a lot of Hallmark movies don't bother with because they're very focused, and it's just kind of only the protagonist and their immediate family, and they don't really have the time or the real estate really to tackle anything else. And here they took the time, and it really fleshed out the world. There's a lot of things I like about it, but yeah, just I think partially it's casting Teddy Sears, an actor I like, but you'll notice that when they cast him in things like
Evergreen.
I was thinking of Masters of Sex or like The Flash, like the things they do outside of Hallmark. Yeah, he's really, really good at being charming, but you know there's something dark there.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that I think he kind of brings with him in a lot of his roles, whether he means to or not. I think that's just kind of his persona.
Yeah, so I would 100% buy him as a serial killer. Like,
yeah, he'd be a great serial killer. I mean, no.
Yeah.
Like, don't be a serial killer, but like, if they needed to make another Silence of the Lambs type movie, obviously cast Teddy Sears.
Yes, definitely.
I agree. The one thing I do like in this script that's not in every Hallmark movie is that like her career is taken like seriously, and she's not expected just to like abandon it for like a guy, which I kind of like.
Yeah.
I appreciate that too.
Yeah,
it's nice. Yeah.
So, where did you have it ranked in your ranking, Bibbs?
This is my number 6, but it's not like a with a bullet kind of thing. Yeah. Like I hate this one. This is just like I think the other ones. I think the Christmas mentality of the other ones keep them a little bit more focused. This one kind of starts off as like almost a romanticized Hallmark wedding movie, but then it becomes this weird Sweet Home Alabama thing, and then it gets like oddly dramatic and intense at the end. And I think it just ultimately feels like kind of the roller coaster I didn't want to take. And afterwards, you're just like, oh, I shouldn't have gone on that one. Yeah, that was Loop was kind of fun, but now I'm feeling it. Like that's how I feel about Backyard Wedding.
Where do you have it, Amber?
So I actually have this ranked 5th, which is. I mean, in Crown rankings, Rachel, it's actually like a 3.4 or something. So it's not even like that bad of a movie, but it's just not the greatest. I do enjoy it. Frances Fisher is amazing and no matter what she does, but so it's my 5.
I also have it at 5. So we're on the same page.
Ooh, I did not see that coming at all.
Yeah. Okay. So next we have 2013. We have Very Merry Mixup. And this is our plot of her getting engaged and then going and then finding the wrong family and spending Christmas with her fiance's family, but it's not actually her fiance's family. And all kinds of hijinks ensue. And Bibbs, what do you think about this one?
This one for me is one of the prototypical Hallmark Christmas movies. Like if you had asked me like put 5 Hallmark Christmas movies together to give people the gist of what works and what doesn't work in a Hallmark movie, this would be one of them. I think this one is very, very cute. I think the setup is kind of novel. Like you haven't seen this done like a lot. And the cast is really charismatic. They did this really clever thing where not only is Alicia Witt and her co-star some guy whose name totally escapes me.
Mark Wiebe?
Yeah.
Mark Wiebe. They are really, really likable together. Mm-hmm. They're really charming. They bring out the best in each other. You want them to end up together. But also the fake family she ends up with is super great. Like they have personality, they have a cast that's really engaged. You don't just get the sense that they just generally like Christmas. Like what was that Hallmark movie that came out like this year about the flight attendant who gets holed over in Chicago? Yeah. And like the Christmas family she ends up with is really kind of weird and off-putting. And it's just like, you're not part of our Christmas cult unless you wear reindeer antlers. And it just doesn't feel wholesome. This feels like she genuinely ended up in a family with actual traditions.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like this one. I think it's sweet. I think it's got a formula, but the formula works. And I really, really dig it. So this is actually one of my favorite Hallmark Christmas movies.
Yeah, I've written down, if you don't like this one, then these Christmas movies aren't for you.
There you go.
What do you think about this one?
Yeah, so I love this one so much. I own this one, obviously, because it's so good. It's one of my favorites of all of the Christmas movies. The chemistry between Alicia Witt and Mark What's-His-Face is so good, and like the scene where they go and decide to make cookies is just like really believable and really fun and so sweet. So it's such a great movie. And like her real fiance and his family are like, they're not terrible people, but they are just like the most boring people in the whole universe.
I love two things about those. First off, a lot of Hallmark movies have the cookie making scene, and there's usually that moment where everyone's covered in flour, and you're just like, how did you even do that? I've made cookies. That never happens. And then you're watching it, just like everyone is literally covered in flour. Like, you're just like, that's just probably not sanitary. I don't know. That's not good. But here, they actually had a reason for it other than, hey, let's make cookies, because they were both in a car accident and they're concussed and they have to stay up. They actually put in the little extra thought it takes to justify the Hallmark cliche, and so there's a reason to do it, and it makes it so much better. And it really, really works. The other thing is, that family. And we've seen this a lot. Like the sort of, we meet like your significant other's family and they're disapproving, snooty people. Like, I think that happened to Candace Cameron Bure like 2 or 3 times. Christmas Detour. Christmas Detour is the perfect example. By the way, I love that, like, the boyfriend from Christmas Detour who likes business and doesn't like Christmas as much as other people is the same boyfriend who showed up in that other Teddy Sears one.
Yeah. Yes.
And so and I like to think it's the same character, and he's perpetually doomed.
Yeah, poor Marcus.
To like lose characters to Christmas dudes. Like, just like, I want to do like an alternate Hallmark movie where he meets someone else who likes business, and they actually have like a nice little romance. It's kind of boring, but they're good together.
Yeah.
But like the family at the end of Merry Mixup is almost like hilariously dull. Like, they play it up a little bit just to make sure, like, listen, they might be real people, but no, you wouldn't want to spend time with them either. You do not want to marry into this family. You want to marry into the nice family that puts things they like about each other in a hat. So yes.
Yeah, not the family who's like, here's a kale shake.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I have this in number 1 in my ranking. All
right. This is also my number 1.
This is, believe it or not, my number 2, because there's another
one
that
I
really like, another Alicia Witt. Actually, I like all the other ones, like to varying degrees. Like Backyard Wedding's the only one I'd go, you don't need to see that. But like, I like all the other ones. And this was my favorite until very recently.
I was really debating between this one and the other one that's number 2, but I feel like I've loved this movie forever, even though it only came out in 2013. So there's like almost a nostalgia factor for this one.
The Cartwrights was 2014. This is the single mom who has to get a job at Christmas, and she ends up playing Santa. And they don't know that it's like a woman playing Santa, and to help pay for Christmas. And my opinion on this one is, and this stars Gabriel Hogan, and my opinion on this one is that it's not my favorite, but I like the concept, and I like Wallace Shawn in it. I think he's pretty fun, and Gabriel Miller, who's in Trading Christmas. I think she's also always good. She elevates any movie she's in. So it's fine for me. I don't love it though. But I don't know. What do you think, Bibbs?
I like this one too. I think Wallace Shawn is a really good get for this sort of thing. Yeah. He's the kind of character actor you're not surprised to see, but he brings a lot of genuineness to it as this Christmas angel who kind of knows a bunch of things other people don't and gets to play around and mess with the reality of it. And I always like that. I think the thing I like about this one is that it's actually unusually and forthrightly progressive for a Hallmark Christmas movie, because the whole idea is she's playing Santa and they don't know she's a woman, and she's worried about what they'll find out and it'll be a problem. And then in the end, people do find out, and she's fired for lying, and I totally get that. But when it comes down to is the entire community rallies around her and says, and we're fine with that. because it's Christmas. It's all magical anyway. She was really good at it. She made the kids feel nice. Like all of that. I actually really, really think this has a really nice message for a Hallmark movie, because a lot of Hallmark Christmas movies, the message boils down to is Christmas is nice and business is bad. And here there's something a little bit more on their mind, and I appreciate that. And that elevates it a little bit for me, just because that's unusual in a positive way for Hallmark.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting because they keep like introducing things in this movie that never quite pan out. Like there's this whole thing about, when she's Santa, she's got like Christmas powers and she knows what kids really want and stuff. And you'd think that would be important later, and it isn't. It's just in like one scene, and it's kind of weird. Like that's gotta be, I'm watching this and I'm like, oh, this has got to be like how the third act comes along and she'll know like how this woman at work was naughty or something, or how this person was nice. And like, no, none of that. That is not a thing. It's kind of a weird wasted opportunity, and that I think holds it back a lot. It's also just not quite as funny as you'd think it would be.
Yeah,
like it's absurd, and I mean not like inherently absurd, but like it's silly. She's playing dress up and acting like Santa around the guy she likes, and the guy she likes thinks she's really this Santa dude, and you're just like, well, I don't buy this. This is like almost Shakespearean in terms of like, you know, woman's wearing pants. I have no idea that's not a woman. Like, no, that's a contrivance. Fine. But yeah, I don't know. It's a bunch of missed opportunities, but there's a lot of things I like about it.
Yeah, I think that her and Gabriel Hogan in this one don't have the best chemistry. I think they're much better in one coming up. But sometimes it takes 2 rounds with a pairing for it to gel for me. But yeah, that's some really good points there. Amber, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, this one's not my favorite, and I was really going back and forth between Backyard Christmas and Christmas at Cartwright's. Like literally 4 and 5, I was like scribbled it out and replaced them like so many times. But so spoiler alert, you know where it is now. But yeah, this one doesn't super work for me, and I think it mostly comes down to I just don't really buy the relationship between her and Gabriel Hogan in this movie. It just doesn't seem like that believable, and their chemistry is not that great. And I love cross-dressing movies, so that doesn't make any sense why I don't love it. I also feel like you said they kind of played it serious and they didn't lean into the funny of this movie. They just were like, oh, this is very serious, where it could have been really funny and they just didn't pull the trigger on that.
It's 6 in my ranking. Where do you have it, Bibbs?
It's right in the middle. I was debating between 3 or 4, and it's kind of interchangeable. I guess I'll say it's 4.
Okay.
It's likable enough, and I wouldn't tell anyone to avoid it by any stretch of the imagination, but it does not make much of an impression.
There you go.
And then it's my 4.
Yeah.
So do you have it at number 4?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, interesting. Okay.
Because remember, Backyard was 5, but I was like,
oh, interesting. So you have one that's different at 6. Okay. All right. Let's do this. Okay. So we have I'm Not Ready for Christmas. This is 2015. This is Alicia's niece makes a wish that she can never lie. And so this becomes kind of a liar thing. She can't lie. And it basically like forces her to have better balance with work and to be there more for her niece and other things. And George Stoltz is in it, and as the romantic lead.
As the guy. He's the guy.
As the guy.
The love interest. He's
right. What do you think about this one, Bibbs?
This was the one for me where I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe they're just doing Liar, Liar at Christmas. Like he's hitting all the beats of Liar, Liar, but it's at Christmas. Yeah. I can't believe they're allowed to do that. This is insane. And I think it's an okay Liar, Liar at Christmas. And I think it really boils down to Alicia Witt knows how to make it work. She understands that the reason why Liar, Liar worked isn't that he always told the truth and it was awkward. It's that you're fighting yourself. And I think she gives a really good performance as someone who wants to lie and can't believe she can't and keeps trying anyway. She's almost cartoonishly selfish at the beginning, but that's good because I think if she was genuinely selfish and awful, we wouldn't want her to succeed.
I mean, I think that this cute concept, I agree, I think that her and George Stoltz like pretty fun chemistry. I mean, my only flaws with it would be that like this niece is very demanding. I mean, like, oh my gosh, like she expects her to be everything, every function, and like when she misses anything, like, I don't know, it's just, you think that she had like been killing kittens. Like, I think it was a little much.
Alicia's her aunt.
Yeah.
Like if it's your mom and dad, yeah, okay, fine. It's her aunt.
Right.
Aunts aren't required to go to everything. Yeah. I don't know what environment she's in, but that's not a thing.
Yeah, exactly. And but I think it's pretty entertaining. I enjoyed it. What about you, Amber?
Yeah, so this one is not my fave. George Stoltz, I love him. I love George Stoltz. We'll start off by saying that. And I feel like he thinks he's way too good for Hallmark, because I feel like he was just like barely dialing it in. Like, he's like, I showed up, you're welcome, which I don't like it. And then also I feel like the Santa wasn't very good. And is this the one? I feel like this is the one where they have like a CGI Santa beard, isn't it?
I can't remember that.
Is it? That's insanity.
Because there's like, I just remember watching this movie and being like, I hate almost everything about it. And like, Rachel knows I love liars. I love where people lie. I love where people can't lie. Like, lying is the best. But like,
we have that as like a Hallmarkies shirt. Lying is the best. Hallmarkies podcast.
We should. But I don't know. This movie, it was so tough for me because I mean, Alicia Witt did do a good job of being the person who can't lie. And like, you could see her like internalizing the struggle of wanting to lie, like you said. But every other element in this movie just did not work for me.
I have one counterpoint to this. There's one thing in this movie that I would be shocked if we all can't agree was awesome. And that's Alicia Witt's theme song.
Yeah. Yeah, she's
I'm not ready for Christmas. Not gonna go there. I didn't learn the words to this song, but it's catchy. Like, it's really catchy, and I like it.
They shouldn't have titled the movie that, though. The title is a super snore. I'm not ready for Christmas. And it doesn't really make sense to the movie.
Wasn't it originally announced as The Truth About Christmas?
That makes way more sense.
Yeah. Amber, I get the impression you don't like that song as much as I do.
I do not like that song as much as you do. And maybe it's because I don't know if you were around and watching Hallmark movies as intensely as I was back then, but they played this song like every interstitial, every preview for all of the Hallmark movies for the entire season. I have probably heard just that part of this, like the same 15 seconds of that song 4,000 times. And like, I wanted to die.
I'm gonna throw it out there. I was watching Hallmark, and that's why I like it, because it burrowed into my brain like a parasite.
At 4 in my ranking.
Yeah, I have this at 3, but as I said, my 3 and 4 are pretty interchangeable. I think I'm Not Ready for Christmas and Christmas at Cartwright's are both like good watches, but I would not like, they're not like my favorites by any stretch of the imagination.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's obviously my number 6. I did not like it.
Okay. All right. So then we have the Christmas list. This was 2016. And basically, Alicia plans a perfect Christmas that she's always wanted since she was a little girl. And she has this Christmas list from when she was little. And she plans it at this snowy town. And her boyfriend is the president of her company, and he is very slick business guy, like you like to say. And but then she meets this local guy, and anyway, he helps her kind of give her a tour of Christmas and makes her Christmas list come true. And I had never seen this one before this week, so I watched it, and I thought it was really charming. I really liked it. I thought that Peter Benson was really good as the wrong guy. He was not a total jerk. He was pretty nice, actually.
He's actually weirdly accommodating, actually. Yeah. He's not super invested, but he'll do it because she likes it, and I kind of appreciated that.
Yeah, he will wear her. He at least he'll wear the shirt she got him, and he'll try a little bit. And Gabriel Hogan is in this, and I think it was much better in this than in Christmas at Cartwright. I think they had much better chemistry, in my opinion. They should have more time together, and the little girl's really cute. And I kind of like the idea of this person who like kind of became her mother, but she doesn't really want to be her mother. And so she's like using this this Christmas thing that was like her way of, as a kid, saying, I'm not going to become my mother. And so she's doing this Christmas thing as kind of her way to try to not be her mother. And I don't know, I thought that was actually kind of interesting, and I really enjoyed it a lot. What about you, Amber?
Yeah, I really like this one. Their chemistry between Gabriel Hogan and Alicia Witt is way better. I like all of the like traditional ridiculous Christmas activities that like normally they just shoehorn into the movies, but they're like, here's a reason she wrote a list. So I do like that. And then also I think it's kind of fun that Gabriel Hogan's mom is in this.
Huh.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. What about
Susan Hogan. So
you know,
I like when family are in things.
And liars.
And liars. Like if there was a movie just about a family of liars cast with a real family, I'd be in.
I hadn't seen this one until this week either, and I loved having an excuse to watch a Christmas movie in April because I was actually like having a bad day, and I was like, yay! And it's interesting, and I think honestly, like after hearing y'all talk about it, I realize I put this too low down on my list because there's a lot of things I really like about this one. First off, I mentioned at the beginning, I haven't really come back to it. This is the movie in which Alicia Witt like legit acts like a crazy person. Mm-hmm. Like we see this opening where she's a little girl and her mom is like extremely obsessive compulsive, and she's a loving mom, but you can see that that's just an environment that like forced Alicia Witt to adapt in ways that aren't serving her well as an adult. So when she sees this old Christmas list of things she wanted to do for Christmas, she realizes, I want to do all these things. It's a good little setup. I like that later on, she actually has a really good, serious, honest heart-to-heart with her mom, where her mom doesn't fully apologize for the way she was. She just says, I became this to adapt to a husband. You became this just like me to adapt to me. And that wasn't fair to either of us. And we both have a lot of growing up to do. I thought that was really sweet. But in the middle there, between those moments, Alicia Witt's like excitement about Christmas is like borderline concerning. You like see her find the list, like Christmas. Oh, I found my old Christmas list. Oh, I'm gonna have the best Christmas ever. And then it cuts to her like frolicking in the snow all of a sudden in this weird nebulous limbo where it's just like snow, trees, Christmas, yay! And I'm not even exaggerating. That's exactly how she delivers it. And like, we see that she's actually in like this photo op at an office party where you're inside a snow globe. And you're just like, it's not even like she's actually in the forest. She's just looking for any excuse. And then there's the obligatory tree buying sequence. And she's talking to the trees. And like, you know, like, oh, you're going to come home with me, aren't you? You're nice, aren't you, Mr. Tree? And, like, you get the impression she's, like, building up a backstory for the tree. Like, they're going to be good friends. And, like, it's just really odd. And I found it charming because Alicia Witt was doing it, but it's also a little off-putting, and you're just sort of worried about her for a while. But ultimately, you're right. This is a very, very sweet little movie in which all the characters are varying degrees of nice. Like, they're not, like, overselling it. They're just letting them sort of be. And, yeah, I think, honestly, I put this, honestly, at number 5 on my list, but I think I'm going to have to re-rank my list on the fly. Because I think this is probably more like my number 3, and I'm not ready, and Christmas at Cartwright's probably be like my 4 and 5.
All right, we talked you into it.
I think you did. I think you
bullied.
Yeah. Oh, you also like bullying? Oh, this is going to be a great shirt. Yes. I like liars, families.
I like lying, families, and bullying.
Hallmarkies.
So I have this at number 2 on my ranking.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and it's my number 3.
Okay, great. The Mistletoe Inn. So that was last year's, 2017. And this is she is dumped by her boyfriend at the beginning of the film. This is based on a Richard Paul Evans book. And it is, and the book is like way, way darker. But she gets dumped, and then she goes to this writing seminar, and she meets this man played by David Alpay, who's supposedly one of the other students. Spoiler alert, he's not. He turns out to be this big author, and yeah, they work together, and they work on their writing, and they have cute little moments, and there you go. So Amber, what do you think of this one?
So I super love this movie, and it was really tough choosing between this and the other one for my number one spot because it's so good. And Casey Manderson as her ex-boyfriend is obviously the best part of every movie he's in. No offense, Alicia Witt, but Casey Manderson stole the show from you. But I really liked it. I liked the chemistry between David Alpay and Alicia Witt. Alicia Witt's pratfall or fatfall when she's on the ice is so good, and she just really nails it. Her performance in this movie is amazing. The thing that really pushed it down is I hate Richard Paul Evans, so it got a little bit of a bump down because of that.
Yeah, the book is like there's suicide and like cancer and like
wow, I had no idea. That's nuts.
Oh yeah. It's
I was a fan of this one, like because I've never read Richard Paul Evans's work, but I've seen the two like Hallmark Christmas movies they made out of his work, and I really liked The Mistletoe Promise as well. Because I think both the Mistletoe Promise and The Mistletoe Inn, as screenplays anyway, I can't attest to the source material, they're really sharply written. Like the dialogue is unusually good for a Hallmark movie. Not only is everyone, I mean, the plot works perfectly well, but like what they are is they're both two movies in which people get to know each other over the course of the story, but rather than just rely on some like down home sentimental nostalgia, like, oh, we're making cookies, you really get the impression that they're bonding and that they're sharing ideas. Mm-hmm. The Mistletoe Inn, I'm watching this with my wife, who is a published author. Like, she's written a bunch of short stories, and she's finished a new novel she's working on. And, you know, I'm a film critic. I write kind of nonfiction for a living, and we're watching this movie, and we're just like, this movie understands writers pretty well. I mean, yeah, they're kind of cutesy, and they fall over in the ice and blah, 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 blah. But when they're actually talking about writing and the importance of, you know, actual like research and detail, or when he has that cute speech about the snowmams and how like one of them has good writing advice and one of them has bad writing advice, and how the different ways you can internalize criticism. We're watching this, and I'm like, you know what? This is a good movie. Not just a good Hallmark movie, but a good movie. Like,
and both this movie and the Mistletoe Promise were like the teleplay was written by the same guy, Michael Norris, and yeah. I give all the credit to him.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
They Richard Paul Evans like, because the also really dark and like sad, and yeah, they're so they did a good job.
That's so weird.
Yeah,
that's so weird to learn that. I love that that's a thing. Yeah. I love that there's like this whole cottage industry of making these really dark, like serious things into light comedies, and the light comedies are better. I love that.
In the book, he gets divorced, and it's from the man's perspective. He gets divorced and left for somebody else, and,
wow.
And his father has cancer, and he's considering suicide. It's just
wow.
It's very like
there's this weird thing. There's this thing, and we see this a lot in like the geek community, like in comic book movies a lot, where you'll watch like Iron Man 3 and they like changed the villain, the Mandarin, a lot. And a lot of the comic fans are like, this sucks because that's a bad adaptation. No, it's like, no, it's not a faithful adaptation. They actually told the story better. And I think that's a thing that we sometimes get lost on, the idea that faithfulness isn't necessarily best for the movie.
Yeah.
Like The Wizard of Oz is actually a very shoddy adaptation of the material if you're only going by faithfulness.
Yeah.
But it's perfect.
Right.
Yeah.
And here, like, it sounds like they changed a lot, and I am super glad that they did, because both The Mistletoe Promise and The Mistletoe Inn are among the best Hallmark movies, if you ask me. So that's so
like,
strange.
High fives to Michael Norris, and please go away, Richard Paul Evans.
The only flaw I have with this movie is I thought the ending was a little bit groan-inducing, like the whole liar reveal. How could you lie to me and not be the person? I don't know. That's my like least favorite plot device.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that, because honestly, most of the time, I can't even remotely believe that they'll ever have a real relationship after their entire thing's built based on a lie. You can never trust that person again. And yet, Alicia Witt and David Alpay are just really great together, and I was kind of just fine with it. And I knew what channel I clicked on. Like, I know what I bought my ticket to see. That's like saying, oh, I can't believe Jason Voorhees killed all those teenagers. You knew what movie you went to. Yeah. Like, that's how I feel about that. So I feel like I can't complain about that too much. No. But you're right. It's a monster cliche. And, you know, when you watch as many Hallmark movies as we do, they're built on cliches, and you really start to notice them because they pile up on each other.
Yeah, but it's not a deal breaker for me at all. But anyway, I have it at third place on my ranking. What about you, Amber?
It's my second.
Okay.
And it's my number one, but again, it's between this and Very Merry Mix-Up. Like they're both like in my upper echelon of Hallmark Christmas movies.
Yeah, and in the end, I'm pretty sure Bibbs and I have a pretty similar list. So.
Yeah, so let's go over our lists here. So I have Very Merry Mix-Up at 1. I have The Christmas List at 2. And it probably was actually helped a little bit by the sort of Christmas novelty in April effect, actually. But I really did enjoy it. So number 2, The Christmas List. Number 3, The Mistletoe Inn. Number 4, I'm Not Ready for Christmas. Number 5, Backyard Wedding. And number 6, Christmas at Cartwright's. So what about you? What's your list, Bibbs? Your
okay, so again, my number, yeah, I changed it a little bit. It's all basically the same. I decided I liked Christmas List better, but Mistletoe Inn is my number 1. I think it's a really, really sharply done movie. Very Merry Mix-Up is my number 2, and it's super close because that is like one of the examples of Hallmark Christmas at its best. I shifted Christmas List to number 3. I still think it's a bit mixed, but I think the good is so good. Yeah, it outweighs the rest of it. My 4 and 5, and they're kind of a tie, are Christmas at Cartwright's and I'm Not Ready for Christmas. For me, they're kind of interchangeable. They're both like have an okay high concept, and it's mostly saved by Alicia Witt and like maybe a supporting performance or two. But they're just sort of genial and not particularly great. And then lastly, Backyard Wedding, which has a few things I like about it, but is just all over the place tonally.
Yeah. Amber?
And so then I have a number 1, A Very Merry Mix-Up. Number 2, The Mistletoe Inn. Number 3, Christmas List. Number 4, Christmas at Cartwright's. Number 5, Backyard Wedding. And number 6, I'm Not Ready for Christmas, with a dialed-in George Stoltz.
There you go. Great. Well, that was really fun. We should definitely we should do this again. This was
for the Step Up movies.
Yeah.
I'm dead serious. Are you serious about the Step Up movies? Because
I have been talking about it for a while. Yeah.
No.
Okay, I'm there.
It's like this random anomaly that I haven't seen them because I love dance movies. It's just
I
know. It's terrible.
Oh, okay.
So I need to repent, and I will.
Yeah, so I mean, so like we have been like, Rachel, you haven't seen Step Up? Oh, you have to watch these so that we can talk about them, and it's just been like a thing. So
I run into people who say like, have you seen Step Up? And they're like, yeah, I saw the first one. And I'm like, then you didn't see Step Up.
Well, so this is good. So now I can see it in the correct order.
Yes.
In the way it's meant to be seen. So this is good.
You watch the Moose Chronicles, and then you watch them pre-Moose.
Okay,
good. Well, is Moose in 2? Yeah, he is. Yeah, he is.
We're introduced to Moose in 2. He becomes the protagonist in 3. And then 4, he only shows up at the end, but he's so important. I actually call 4 the time Moose saved Miami and the events that immediately preceded it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, he's back on top in 5.
Spoiler alert!
Moose Chronicles. I'm sorry, Miami is fine. Like, I hate to ruin it for you. Miami's cool. And then, of course, 2.
Yeah. Cool.
2 does have Allison Stoner in it, though, so it's fine.
Well, we will definitely have you on for that, for sure. That was really fun. And thank you so much. This was so fun. Fun for me, and hopefully had a good time. And we just really appreciate you coming on our little podcast.
You know, it was a delight, and I love the passion you both have for these movies, that even the people who like them aren't always passionate about them. And I think sometimes they get written off, or they're sort of treated ironically. And I think it's one of the best things about them is that you can watch these movies as sincerely and ironically at the same time.
Yeah.
And they work both ways. And I love that you both get that, and that you sort of sincerely love these things and you can also criticize them. And I really dig this podcast, and I just want to thank you both for doing it, and thank you both for having me, because this is a lot of fun.
Well, thank you.
You and your ways.
Well, so how can people find you?
Okay. Well, I'm all over the place. I'm on Twitter at William Bibbiani. My podcast, Canceled Too Soon, is on iTunes and Stitcher and wherever fine podcasts are podcasted. And that's the show where we review television shows that lasted one season or less. That has a Twitter account. It's at CanceledCast. Canceled has one L. We also have a Patreon, patreon.com/canceledtoosoon, where we have bonus episodes for our Patreon subscribers. This month is our pilot season, so we're reviewing failed TV pilots, but we're also doing pilot episodes for bonus podcasts. And our Patreon subscribers will get to be our studio execs, and they'll get to vote for which one goes to series. So stick around for that, because that's a lot of fun. We also have the critically acclaimed podcast, me and my co-host Whitney Seibold, where we review new movies, and we pair good movies and bad movies, and as sort of a odd double feature, and use them to explore each other. That is on the Schmoes Know iTunes feed and the SK Plus YouTube channel, if that's how you prefer to consume your media. And I sometimes write for IGN and The Wrap. And if you love movie trivia, you can see my games on the Movie Trivia Schmodown on YouTube, which is a trivia show in which people compete in movie trivia, but it also has like the sort of wrestling aspect. So there's a lot of like big entrances and smack talk and weird behind the scenes drama that gets played up for laughs, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, you tear it up in the Schmodown. You do
thank you.
Pretty well. It's pretty well. And you want to follow Bibbs on Twitter, because he does these amazing AMAs and that are really fun. So you can ask him anything, literally.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
I really like them. So Amber, where can people find you?
As always, I'm at Amber Brainwaves on Twitter, and that's it.
Great. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews on iTunes and on YouTube, so check that out. And
So great work. You're the best.
Yay.
Bye.